I want to talk about knives of the kitchen. I have my knife set out here and I want to talk about them all. I'm just going to give a little insert about each of them, but first I want to talk about the three that are most used in the kitchen and ones that you need in your kitchen to make it more effective in your kitchen. This is the chef knife, also known as a French knife or a cook's knife. There's different versions. There's a Sanku knife that's basically the same. It has divots on the side that allow food to be released off the blade easier. This is a chef knife. The next knife is the serrated knife or the bread knife. As you can see, it has serrated teeth and it's used more like a sawing motion more than just a slicing or a chopping motion. And then the third knife that you should have in your home is a paring knife or a utility knife. This is great for peeling, trimming. It's a very useful knife. Although a paring knife and a utility knife are very different, they tend to get lumped up into one, and so a paring knife, utility knife is very easy for little tasks. If this is all you have, I highly recommend you getting a chef knife or cook's knife. A chef knife is used to dice, chop, and slice. Mincing, it's an all-around tool. It's the chef's workhorse. It's what we love to use. All knives have certain points on their body, and I want to go over those points now with you. This whole part right here of the knife is called the tip. It's the whole tip of the knife. Where it comes together in a point, that is the point. So where it comes together, the point, this is the tip. Right here is the blade or the edge. This is the spine. Right here is called the heel. The heel connects into this area, which is called the bolster. The bolster connects the blade to the tang. And the tang is this metal piece that runs the full length of the blade, of the handle. And you should have a full length tang that goes the whole handle. So the bolster, the tang, and then we have the handle, and the handle is secured to the tang with rivets. And you have your rivets secured, and then your butt. And that is your chef's knife or cook's knife. And this also known as a French knife. The proper way to hold the knife, I know a lot of you guys are used to holding it like that, and then you put your finger up on top and you give it pressure. But the proper way to hold it is you take your index finger and you place it on one side of the heel, take your thumb and go on the other side of the heel, and then wrap these three fingers around the blade. This actually gives you a more sturdy grip on your knife, and this allows you to control it better, and you can do the rocky motion to slice, dice, chop, and mince with your chef knife. Chef knife will come in also a 10-inch blade, so you can see that this is significantly longer than my 8-inch chef knife. And then I already talked about my bread knife, serrated edges. This is for softer foods like bread. Some chefs like to use this on tomato. You're gonna see me use it on a peach later, just to show you how to use the breaded knife. This is a slicing knife. It's considerably thinner and longer than a chef knife. Of course, it's about the same length as my 10-inch chef knife, but the blade is thinner, and that's so that you can actually slice your meats with your slicing knife. I'll actually show you how to use that. These are called boning knives and a fillet knife. Now I have two of them, and you're like, wait, a boning knife and a fillet. The difference is the boning knife is, I always grab the wrong one. The boning knife is hard. Okay, it doesn't bend, it doesn't give, and this is the boning knife. This is my fillet knife that you can see it has a bend. It's a lot thinner of a blade than the boning knife. And the fillet knife just allows me to get in between the skin and the flesh of the meat that I am filleting. So those are two knives as well. And then the last knife that I'm going to talk about is just the tournée knife. The tournée knife is similar to the paring knife, but it has a curved beak and it has a special shape. And the reason for this shape is to help create a cut known as the tournée cut. It's very great for peeling and slicing. It is a paring knife, and it's just referred to as a tournée knife. The tournée cut is a 7-sided football-shaped oblong item that is very difficult, and it's mainly meant for visual effects. So just keep in mind the 3 knives that you want at home would be the chef's knife, the serrated knife or the bread knife, the paring knife. Other 2 items that are useful to have in your home while cooking and doing things would be a blender and a food processor. The food processor is great for chopping, mincing. It also shreds, slices. It does a lot of great things. The blender will make smoothies, drinks. It also can mix together a really good fine salsa. These are 2 other items that you would love to have in your kitchen to help do your work. I want to talk about cutting boards really quick. This is a polycarbonate cutting board. They make polycarbonate cutting boards, they make stone cutting boards, and they make wood cutting boards. You can see my countertop is actually made out of a chopping block wood. This wood is what they would make a wood cutting board out of. Wood cutting boards are super porous. They're a little bit harder to clean, but they do look a lot nicer. Stone cutting boards tend to be a little bit rougher on your knife. They're easier to clean. They don't cut or scratch as easily as wood and polycarbonate. But the best one that I refer is the polycarbonate plastic. They're easier to clean. They're not porous. They don't absorb smells and odor. And this is the best way that I like. With my cutting board, you notice it slides around very easily. So the best way to anchor this down is with an anchor. And you can buy a rubber mat from the store that you put in your cabinets underneath your dishes. I'm actually just gonna use a wet washcloth. It's wet. I'm just gonna go ahead and place this underneath my cutting board. And now my cutting board will not slide around, and it's in place, and I'm not gonna slip and slide. So let me show you that again. Without the wet cloth, it slides very easily. If I put a wet cloth underneath it, it is secure and in place. This is a truing stone, not a sharpening stone. With the truing stone, I'm gonna hold my knife at the same degree angle that I would hold my knife for sharpening, and that is 22.5 or 20 degree, about the size of a matchbook. And I just do equal strokes on both sides of my blade, and this just trues my edge from the previous day cutting. To start off, I'm going to go with some different knife cuts and how to cut an onion. I'm not going to go a lot into the knife cuts of an onion because knife cuts is a different show. But just really quick, this is round, it rolls around. Like I said, I'm going to talk about it. So I want a flat surface. So I cut off one end, and then I'm just going to turn it over, and I'm going to cut another slice. And that gives me a flat edge to cut on my onion now. Also, this allows me to peel it fairly easy. Mostly easy. You just get all the dead skin off. They come in layers, so you just peel off that outer layer that's starting to thin and dry out and become the skin. And this gives you a flat surface to roll on, cut on, so now the onion's not going to roll around. This is the claw grip. Notice my fingers are tucked back. My thumb is tucked back in a way, and this way when it's on the floor, on the cutting board, my knife isn't going to touch my tips and my fingers. They're not going to be underneath the blade, and I have this little angle right here that will allow the blade to slip past me with no harm. And that's actually how I hold the food. The side of the blade actually rests on my middle finger knuckle, which gives it a guide. One of the slices is I can do a slice, an actual slice, and this is just making a slice cut on my onion, creating nice rings. The next one is I'm going to chop it, and with the chop, having my hand flat on the onion, I'm going to make some horizontal cuts into the onion. And this is just going to cut some cuts that way. Going around my knife, my guide hand is going to be on the side. I'm going to cut some sides. I'm actually going to do a chunk cut. So there's some chunks. I mean, you can just see the chunk of the onion.
Okay, I can go ahead and make medium dice. I'm not able to do a large dice because I did the chunk. So here's going to be about my medium dice. And then if I want to mince it, I'm just going to make smaller pieces here. Again, always using a flat surface to use my knife, keeping my guide hand controlling the vegetable or the item cutting, and my knuckle close to the side of the blade. To mince this, I just go back and forth like this, putting my guide hand on top of the knife and just rocking that knife back and forth. And by having my hand here, I keep the blade on to the gutting board, cutting and mincing my onion. That's the purpose of the curve on the chef knife, is so that you can rock it. So you have that rock cut, you have the slice cut, you have a chop cut. These are all different ways, and I get chunks, I get small dice, I get mince, and I can get slices. This is all types of cuts with the chef knife that makes it really easy to cut. Okay, to get items off of your cutting board, again, you have a nice edge here. You don't want to, a lot of chefs do, they just take their blade and just scrape it across the board. But if you want to protect your edge, you can just flip it over, keep your hand out of the way of the blade, and just use the back side of your blade to scrape your food off of your cutting board. And then back onto the cutting board. That makes it super easy to use. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this peach. A peach is a softer material, so a lot of chefs will use a bread knife for tomatoes or breads, things that are soft. This peach isn't super soft, it's not super hard. Super available to use my paring knife or my chef knife on, but I'm going to use the bread knife just to kind of show you. I'm not going to apply force, I'm just going to actually saw and let the weight of the knife cut that peach. And that's what a bread knife is used for. It's just a sawing motion, letting the knife do the work, and I am just there giving it the motions of sawing it back and forth. If I was going to be doing fish, I don't have fish to show you guys on, but my boning knife and my fillet knife are for fish. If I'm gonna cut fillets, I'm gonna go ahead and use my chef knife just to cut the fillets. I have a chicken. I just have a quarter of a chicken. I'm not gonna teach you how to fabricate a chicken today, but whenever working with a chicken or cutting a chicken, the chef knife is always a really good tool to use with chicken. And so I have my drumstick here and my thigh here, and they're connected together at a joint. Now, if I want to separate them, to get into that joint, I'm going to use the heel end of my knife, and I'm just going to find that joint, and I'm just going to go right through the joint of the bird. That way I'm not going to cut bone, I'm not going to ruin my knife, I'm just going right through the joint, which is cartilage. And now that my cutting board is clean, I'm gonna go ahead and do my roast. So after you cut meat on your cutting board and you're changing task, well, whenever you're changing task, whenever you're going from something to something else, you'll wanna wash your cutting board and your knife. Onions are very potent and they have a very smell that is easily transferred to other food. So after cutting an onion, if I'm going to cut something that's not going to go with the onion, you'll want a clean cutting board or clean that one. So after cutting the chicken, I went ahead and cleaned the cutting board and cleaned my knife. I'm going to go ahead and cut steak from a roast. To do that, I'm going to use my slicing knife. So with my slicing knife, I just make a slice. And I just slice. That's all you're doing, is you're cutting steaks with a slicing knife. You probably don't even need to move it. You can just go back and forth and just slice and cut out nice steaks. I like using the slicer knife for that because it's longer, it's thinner, it's not as much meat to go not as much steel to go through the meat. You can use the chef knife, but since it has a shorter blade, it doesn't work as well as the slicing knife. A couple other kitchen items I wanted to talk about is going to be the food processor. The food processor is what I use to make tortillas in my earlier video. Food processor is a great tool. You can chop onions, you can mince in it. You have to be careful though, because if you're just trying to chop and you go too long, you're going to end up mincing or pureeing your vegetable. Most food processors come with 3 attachments. They come with an S blade, an S dough blade, which is not sharp, it's just plastic that helps you knead dough, and then it comes with a shredder or a slicer that you just attach onto it. And that's just a food processor. So it's fairly simple. The reason why they're called S blades is because they look like S's. So they come with the S blade, or they come with the S blade plastic. Mine does not have the shredding attachment or the slicing attachment. And then blenders, they actually blend it. They take it beyond mince. It's now a really fine blended product, which a food processor won't do, because that's what a blender does, is it makes it more fine. So blenders are for smoothies and fruit drinks. Food processors are to make more of a chunky item and kind of like salsas or pico de gallos. That is my really basic overview of kitchen gadgets that are nice to have around that help you cook and prepare food. Have a great one.